Blessings. Welcome to today's Law Enforcement Daily Devotional. Just like we spoke of yesterday, and when we finished up Ezra, today we're in Nehemiah. And both of these guys had similar jobs, similar callings from God. They both worked in Babylon for the King Artaxerxes. And both of them are sent back at different times for different jobs, but both of them are sent back to repair Jerusalem. Now Ezra was sent back to repair the temple of God. Nehemiah is sent back to rebuild the walls and the gates. So they're both repairing Jerusalem. A lot of similarities in the stories. And just like yesterday, when we got to the end of Ezra, it was basically a failure on their part to evangelize the people that were around them. Today, as we get into Nehemiah, in this first part of Nehemiah, the people that are coming in and interfering with the rebuilding of the wall, it's a little different. It's Sanballat and their enemies. These guys are even plotting to raid and attack Jerusalem and to kill the people so they'll stop building the walls. So in the beginning of Nehemiah, it's a little different, but I'm not going to, we'll read Nehemiah chapter 6 and 7 tomorrow and see what it says. But as we get started, in chapter 1, Nehemiah hears a bad report about Jerusalem and the walls. So he prays and he prays and he spends a lot of time in prayer and fasting. And he prays that he would have favor before the king. So he's the cupbearer, he goes before the king, and God grants him favor with the King Artaxerxes again. The same king that we've seen for the last several weeks. The speculation that it was the same king that was in the book of Esther, although jury's still out on that, and we may never know. But he finds favor with Artaxerxes, and I want to stop here for just a second. Hey, do you have a supervisor, a captain, a chief that you need favor with, that maybe things haven't gone your way in y'all's relationship? It's not it's not a bad thing to ask God for the favor of your chief. And I say that knowing that we understand we're not to be God pleasers, okay? And we don't look at our chief as somebody who more important, or hold them up and put them on a pedestal. They're just men and women like we are. But there's nothing wrong with having favor and asking God for favor from your supervisor. Lord, give me favor with my chief. Give me favor with my captain. Give me favor with the people of my community, because we definitely need some of that. So I like that part of chapter 1. And then we go to chapter 2, and in verse 18 is another good verse for us. The very end of chapter 18, the second half of it says, so they put their hands to the good work. We're talking about building the wall, and the people decided, let's put our hand to the good work and do this. Let's build this wall. We are called to put our hands to the good work and to go out in our communities, in our departments, and share Christ with all of those around us. Sharing Christ by our actions and by our deeds and by our words. But we have to be very tactful with our words, especially in today's culture. God will give us the timing for our words. Chapter 3 just tells all the different groups and what part of the walls they're working on. So I didn't add any verses, but chapter 3 is a work list, a lineup, daily lineup, if you will, of what people are working on, what part of the walls. Then we get into chapter 4, after we know who's doing all the work and we see all the people of Jerusalem doing the work. Then we start getting into the threats of violence from Sanballat and some of the other people. So they're working on the walls, and now they understand they have to work on the wall and still be ready for an attack. So they have to have their working tools in one hand and their swords in the other hand. Half the people are going to be working on the wall while the other half are standing there ready to defend them and defend the walls. Verses 1 through 3, it says, the ones doing the good work are being mocked, made fun of. They're being demoralized and ridiculed by their enemies. Is that not law enforcement today? We're constantly being mocked and made fun of and accused and threatened violence against by people that want chaos to reign supreme. So we're in a very similar situation. Also, not just a similar situation because we're being threatened, but because we have the good work to do, and we're trying to do the good work. And just like in verse 16, from that day on, half the servants carried on the work, while half of them held spears, the shields, the bows, and the breastplates, and the captains were behind the whole house of Judah. In verse 18, as for the builders, each one wore his sword girded at his side as he built. Man, we're carrying our weapons by our side, yet we're still building our communities and doing the things to try and we're being that thin blue line, keeping chaos from approaching or encroaching on civility. We're the thin blue line, but we're carrying a weapon in one hand and builder tools in the other. And I love how this applies to law enforcement. So just a really good lesson for us today. Tomorrow we're in Nehemiah chapters 6 and 7. So let's see what kind of law enforcement takeaway we can get from those verses. And in the meantime, you guys be safe.